Welcome along to the Irish NFL Show. I'm Kieran O'Donovan, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Sean Pendergast, host of the Payne and Pendergast Sports Radio on 610 Houston Radio. Sean, welcome in.
Kieran, great to talk to you, man. This is awesome. Divisional round of the playoffs. Something the Texans are used to. They're just not used to getting past the divisional round of the playoffs. That's what we're working on this year.
And that's where I was going to start, Sean, because I wanted to go look a little bit at the big picture before we get into into the devil of the details. This is the third year in a row that the CJ Stroud era and it's the third year in a row that they've now won a playoff game. So you can no longer really say that the Texans are a surprise package or that they're a building or developing team. These guys have been there, done that now 3 years in a row, and they've had great success. They've hosted two playoff games, won divisional championships under CJ Stroud. And so they're coming into a situation this weekend where a loss doesn't technically represent success anymore. I mean, you're not you're not a team that can any longer be happy to be there. So what's the level of expectation like in Houston at the moment?
It's the highest expectation level that the fan base has had since the inception of the franchise. This is the highest. And it's ironic because this is the 1 year that they've made the playoffs as a wild card and not by winning the AFC South. And I guess it says something about the AFC South and the AFC in general, that the fan base feels as good as they do at a 5 seed. The AFC South is a stronger division now with Jacksonville in it. The AFC is a topsy-turvy conference this year. The top teams don't have quarterbacks like Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. Josh, of course, is still in the postseason. But I think it's a combination of the fact that the Texans have not only their best defense in the history of the franchise, but I think the best defense in the NFL probably in the last 10 years, probably since that Denver team that won a Super Bowl back in 2015. This defense is something to behold. And I think that, combined with the fact that it feels like all these teams are so even this year in the AFC, and the Texans have really proven themselves against one of the toughest schedules in the league. They've now won 10 games in a row, and it wasn't 10 patsies that they played in there. They had a Josh Allen game in there. They beat Mahomes in Kansas City before the bottom fell out on the Kansas City Chiefs. They beat the Colts back when Daniel Jones was the week before he tore his Achilles tendon in Indianapolis, which is not an easy place to play. They beat the Chargers in Los Angeles. And even their losses, Kieran, the 5 losses they had, 4 of them are to teams that are, by my calculations, I think, other than Jacksonville, still in the playoffs. 4 of them were to playoff teams. And their last 2 losses, they've gone 13-2 in their last 15 games. The 2 losses are to Denver and Seattle, the 2 number 1 seeds. So the Texans, even though they're a 5 seed, they are as live a 5 seed as there is in recent years, in my mind, in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because we were debating that last night. When was the last time a team had such a good defense that it was able to carry them to a championship? And that's where we landed, was that 2015 Broncos. I think we were actually talking about the Broncos at the time, another vaunted defense this year. But you rightly bring up the defense. In year 1 and 2, it was really about CJ Stroud and what a phenomenal rookie season he had. And they were a high-flying offense and this real nitty-gritty, a nitty-gritty defense under DeMeco Ryans. It's fallen away a little bit with CJ Stroud this season. He hasn't really kicked on from that rookie season, but it's let's get to the defense first. It's been all about the defense. And it's funny because the early season, I think, for the Texans was overshadowed by the success of the Colts and, the Liam Cohen era in Jacksonville. And the Texans were allowed to slightly fall under the radar, 2-time champions. It was a strange situation, and probably got a little bit of criticism, and were probably written off for not maybe addressing the offensive line issues. Yeah. But as the season has gone on, you rightly said they've absolutely thundered through all comers, and that culminated last week in absolutely just burying the Steelers. They got to them on every level. I heard an evaluation of the Texans defense yesterday, and it made me laugh. It said the strength of the Texans defense is their speed at corner, nickel, and safety, the speed of the linebackers, and the ability to generate a pass rush. And I just was thinking, what else is there? I mean, where is the weakness? So it really, how do you see that defense shaping up against the Patriots, who while they got to Aaron Rodgers at 42 years of age doesn't pose the threat, that a Drake May rushing could possibly do this weekend. How do you see them handling that threat?
I think Drake May is going to get some yards with his legs in this game. The Texans have let guys leak out a little bit throughout the season, sometimes at the worst of times towards the end of games. Bo Nix at the end of the Denver game in week 9. There was Baker Mayfield in week 2 on Monday Night Football. They had him dead to rights to win the game on 4th and 11, and he squirts out of there and gets a scramble. So if there's an Achilles heel with this Texans defense, and there's not much to criticize about it, they have, I won't say struggled, because they don't really struggle at anything. They've just got certain things they're less good at. But quarterbacks have been able to get some yards on the ground against them with their legs. I could totally see the Patriots unveiling a few wrinkles, maybe with the design run game with Drake May, that they haven't used a lot of this year. The Patriots have played a schedule where they haven't had to use a whole lot of anything exotic this year. The times where they've gotten a little exotic have been against the better teams on their schedule. The Texans will be one of the best teams on their schedule so far this year. So I would expect they're going to unveil a few new wrinkles. The Texans have had a proclivity, not as bad as last year, but at times to give up big plays, big chunk plays. You're never going to go 10 plays for 80 yards against this defense. Never. But the Texans are susceptible to giving up 35, 40-yard chunk plays. And that, erases a lot of good plays that you have as a defense. They're not great in the red zone. They're okay. They're not great in the red zone. They just don't let teams get to the red zone all that often. So those are the areas where they're a little less proficient. They're not bad at anything. They are great at almost everything. The pass rush is absurd in a good way with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, and the push they get on the inside with some of these journeyman types that DeMeco Ryans, not only in Houston, but in San Francisco, always seem to get the best out of. It seems whether a coordinator or a head coach, DeMeco Ryans gets the best out of linebackers and defensive linemen. And that's happening again this year. Azeez Al-Shaair has developed into a Pro Bowl inside linebacker. Henry To'oTo'o, who's a 5th-round pick a couple years ago out of Alabama, has turned into a really good player for them. Jalen Petrie should have been an All-Pro this year. I just think the problem with Petrie is he doesn't really have a position. He's just this dude that's all over the place making plays, kind of a rover. So these guys are all great playing. Obviously, Stingley and Lassiter and Bullock, and I could go on and on. Yeah. The common thread with all these guys, in addition to being very talented, Kieran, they're all maniacs. They're all insane. Not off the field. They couldn't be more gentlemanly off the field, but on the field, they're maniacs. The swarm mentality, as DeMeco Ryans likes to call it. That's what DeMeco was as a player. DeMeco, you would not meet a nicer human being than DeMeco Ryans. Go watch his highlight film. He's a murderer. So that's what they built. He and Nick Caserio, the general manager, had built a defense of 11, what I call civilized savages.
The most interesting comparison I heard this week was yourself and Seth Payne on your show. I think it was inspired by a fan comment or a listener comment. The Texans defense are velociraptors, and the Patriots offensive line are a bunch of Jeff Goldblums. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah. Well, I don't watch all the Jurassic Park movies, and I was mispronouncing it. If you were listening to that segment, I was reading it off something. J.J. Watt was quoting somebody. J.J. Watt was on the McAfee show quoting somebody saying that about the Texans, and I forget who he was quoting, but I had forgotten exactly which dinosaur it was, and somebody texted in, and they're like, Sean, it was velociraptors with machine guns. And my eyes being, I turn 57 next week, so my eyes don't work so good, Kieran, not as good as they used to. I called them velociraptors. I'm like, oh, they're velociraptors with machine guns, and Seth's like, it's velociraptors. So Jeff Goldblum, of course, I'm assuming is part of the contingent on Jurassic Park that's trying to tame the dinosaurs and do whatever. So that's I haven't watched the Jurassic Park movies. I know Jeff Goldblum is in them. I'm guessing he's not a very intimidating character in those movies because Seth Payne his Patriots.
The only problem for the Texans is that the Jurassic Park movies I saw, Jeff Goldblum survived, and that's what you're hoping that they don't do. Speaking of the offensive line, Will Campbell had a rough day. Like, he's had a really impressive season, but he's had some tough days recently, and he had a tough day last week. Do you see Hunter and Anderson looking to get at him again and try and repeat what the Steelers managed to do to him last week.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. Look, the Texans' strength on their defense is they can get to the quarterback with just 4 guys. They don't need the blitz. And the 7 guys on the back end are, half of them are all pros, so they've got an elite secondary. So you've got 4 guys up front that are elite enough to get to the quarterback without having the blitz. And the guys at the quarterback then has to get rid of the ball quickly to attack are the Velociraptors with machine guns. I've been watching a lot and listening to a lot of Patriots coverage this week on the radio and on TV and whatnot. And the 2 things they keep talking about to try to counteract the Anderson-Hunter dynamic is, 1, chipping them. Okay, yeah, like they haven't seen that all year. Seth Payne, my co-host, put together a highlight reel of sacks by Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter in which they've been chipped. And it was a long video. And the other one was, well, if we just get the ball out fast, ask the Steelers how that went on Monday. Ask their running backs how that went on Monday. Ask how they felt on Monday after Kamari Lassiter and Jalen Petrie and Toa Toa and Azeez Al-Shaair and EJ Speed are coming up and hitting them out in the flat. So everything that you can say as a potential antidote to going against Hunter and Will Anderson are all just talk. They're all things that are easier said than done, and they're all things that other teams have tried to do this year with very little success. So I think it's going to be a long day for Will Campbell, to answer your original question. I think it's going to be a long day for Jared Wilson, the rookie left guard next to him. I think it's going to be a long day for that Patriots offensive line and Drake May in general.
Just very quickly, and I appreciate your, you need to get away, and I appreciate your time again, Sean. Thanks a million. Just on the offensive side of the ball, how concerned will the fans be with the fact that Stroud, he had 5 fumbles last week. He couldn't seem to protect the ball. You've got Nico Collins probably out with a concussion. He's not going to make it back. It's looking like at the moment. I know Christian Kirk stepped up last week. How much do you feel like those receivers can step up, Jaden Higgins and co, and how much of it is going to be down to Woody Marks and Nick Chubb on the ground?
Yeah, there's 3 things that work here, Kieran, and I'll take them kind of in the order that you just said them there. The first thing you said with the fans and how they're feeling about CJ Stroud right now. I think it's very mixed right now with CJ Stroud. Me personally, I'm not concerned that what we saw on Monday is some sort of trend that he's going to put the ball on the ground 5 times again like he did against the Steelers. I think it was just a weird, bad night for CJ Stroud. And I say that because one of the things he's done really well this year is protect the football. The Texans had the least amount of turnovers in the NFL this past season offensively. So I can't look at 17 games where he was doing something really well. Then there's one night where there's flukish, freakish things happening and say like, oh my God, CJ's lost. And as you pointed out at the beginning of this conversation, he's been pretty good in the playoffs in that wild card. The 2 games they had won before this Steelers game were 2 of the best games the one he had against Cleveland 2 years ago was the best game a rookie's ever had in the postseason. And then the Charger game last year, he was pretty good as well. So I'm confident that CJ is going to at least manage the game properly, minimize the turnovers, make the big plays when he needed to. He still made a lot of really good plays on Monday. They were just counterbalanced by just some boneheadedness on the 3 turnovers that he had. So that's number 1. Number 2, Nico Collins. That's a problem, obviously, that they don't have Nico. He's one of the half dozen or so best receivers in football. You lose that guy, and that doesn't make you better. The good news is they're more equipped to probably deal with his absence than they were the last couple of years. They had nothing outside of Nico Collins in the playoffs the last 2 years because they lost Tank Dell both years. They lost Dell and Diggs last year. They didn't have anybody who could get open. The 2 rookies have been nice for them this year. Higgins and Knoll. Xavier Hutchinson has really stepped his game up this year. He's been able to get open more. And Christian Kirk, look, if you get the Christian Kirk that you got on Monday, then you're going to be in decent shape. And Dalton Schultz has had a very good year at tight end for the Houston Texans as well. The third thing you brought up is the thing that's my biggest concern, and it's the thing they did best on Monday is run the football. If they run the football like they did against the Steelers, I guarantee you they'll win this football game. The defense won't let them lose a football game if they run it that well. That's my concern. Can they run the ball again that well? And it's not anything about the Patriots that necessarily scares me that they can't. The Patriots are constructed very similar to the Pittsburgh Steelers in terms of the bulk up front, the way they like to defend, how they do against the run, so forth. It's just the inconsistency that the Texans have had offensively this year. It's not, they've been better than they were last year. They've been average as an offensive line, grown into an average offensive line, which I've always thought if you get that with this defense, that's good enough to win a Super Bowl. But there have been games this year, even in recent months, where they haven't been average. They've been below average. So which one shows up on Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, and final question, Sean. I'm not going to ask your pick because I know listening to you guys this week, you've absolutely no fear that the Texans can go in and do the business here. But if the Bills do the business on Saturday night, the Texans will know their fate. How exciting is the prospect of potentially hosting an AFC Championship game in Houston?
Kieran, I mean, I got chills with you just saying it right now. I mean, that's how excited I am about it. The Texans have never hosted a home playoff game outside of the wild card round, and for the chips to fall in a way where they could be hosting not only an opportunity to get to their first Super Bowl, but against a team in the Bills where they've had pretty good luck in that building against Josh Allen. Josh Allen's 0-4 against the Texans in NRG Stadium, including each of the last 2 seasons, and once in the playoffs, but that was Allen's second year in the league back in 2019. And he also lost there as a rookie in 2018. But the last 2 times they played have been 2 of Josh Allen's worst games in his career. The 8-sack game that the Texans had on Thursday Night Football this year. And then last year they played him in week 5 and they held him to his in his MVP year, held him to his lowest completion percentage of his career, 9 for 30. So it would be incredible. It would be amazing. This is where I go into the mode that I know D'Amico Ryans is in. Got to beat the Patriots first.
Well, that game takes place Sunday, 8 p.m. Irish time. The guys are going to be doing a live watch along from Graco Studios, so be sure to tune in on YouTube. Sean Pendergast, host of Payne and Pendergast Sports Radio in Houston. Any Irish listeners can catch that on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, and I recommend that. I've been listening throughout the week, and it's been a huge entertainment for me. So, Sean, I appreciate your time, and great to meet you.
Yeah, Kieran, nice meeting you too. Enjoy the games. Thanks for listening to Payne and Pendergast as well, and hope to do it again. If there's more playoff games, we'll do it again.
Absolutely.
All right.